maybe. And so the format is there's going to be about an hour of me talking. You can interrupt me and ask questions, but I also allotted a half hour afterwards in case people got very enthusiastic and wanted to have lots of Q&A time. The last time I did talk about AI, there were so many questions that I made sure to leave lots of room at the end for that. My name is April Younglove. I'm an adult services librarian here. This is just something that I'm interested in reading a lot about, and I like playing with new technology and exploring it and thinking about what it might mean. So I'm not actually a true expert, but I am well read. So this is a little bit like giving you a review of the literature if you were a college person and had to write those before your test. Oh. So I'm going to start off kind of asking people if they are aware of places that they have seen AI already and where you may have seen it. And I'll bring the mic around. Is anybody aware of that they have seen AI for sure?
I've seen it on my phone because it actually tells me this is AI generated.
Okay.
But otherwise, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the chat, there's like a chat function on your phone that says that?
No, it just do a search.
Oh, like on Google? Yeah. Yes, Google has AI built into it now. Yeah.
On that blanket your mom gave you?
Yes, I'm going to talk about this later. I have a blanket that my mother gifted to me, and it is an example of AI in the wild, not on a computer, on a blanket. Does anybody else have instances where they know for sure, I've seen AI?
I didn't see it, I heard it. So where they have, like they read the article, and then it'll say PhD, like it's supposed to stop for a sentence. It obviously is not a person, although it's a person's voice.
Yeah, those are all good examples. Other places that you may have seen AI on the internet that you maybe don't know that it was AI include if you've seen a YouTube video or a video of somebody that looks like an influencer, it may have been an AI person presenting that. I don't know if person is the right term, but a video that was artificially generated to look like a human speaking. You may have seen that. Blog entries, when you're just looking for some information and you land on something and there's a whole article about it, it may have been written by a human, it might not have. Articles, similar to blogs, but they're just a slightly different format. It's the same thing. The article that you are looking at may or may not be AI generated. One thing that is very confusing to folks is that in the past, you could pretty much know that if you went to, so for instance, this happened to my mom recently, AOL news page, and there's lots of articles that are news, you would assume that all of those articles were written by humans and that the group that's aggregating that for you only is giving you news from real news sources. That's not necessarily true. So AOL news page doesn't necessarily guarantee anymore that all of those articles are real. So I went down this deep dive with her trying to figure out if in fact there were pink whales. It turns out there are, but it also turns out that the article was AI generated. So it is really important to be suspicious or just to ask questions about everything that you pretty much see now. And somebody did mention too, now you can have a chat with an AI.
Well, it seems to me that anytime I call a number that of a company or an entity, it's hard for me to say right now, but it seems frequently I'll get, I believe, AI generated an AI generated response, and So much so that on occasion, if I feel as though a person is on the other side, I'll ask if it's a person. And I've done that probably on more than one occasion, and no one's ever been upset with me. It's been interesting because they recognize how prolific this whole AI.
I really actually love that tip because I have not tried just asking, but my favorite is the noise that they make a pretend typing noise. Let me look that up for you, and it goes click 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 click, and I'm like, that's not a person.
So I'm wondering if people are assuming that if it's AI, that it's accurate. I have specific proof with a test that was very inaccurate, way off. And I think it was because they created a norm based on what people are having, the amount of inflammation people are having now. And in the last 5 years, it's a lot higher. So I went from a 29, which was a bad number, to a 52, but I hadn't gotten any better.
And I'll talk a little bit more about, for like how to verify information that you get to find out whether it is true or not, which is a big thing. You definitely should not assume that just because AI tells it to you that it's true. Any more than, and I'll talk about this later, you meet a neighbor at a barbecue and they tell you a fact. And if your neighbor at the barbecue tells you a fact, they are a human and they might be wrong. And you go, huh, I didn't know that about, I don't know, plants that eat bugs. And then you would go and do some research, right? You wouldn't go, oh, okay, that's a fact that I'll remember forever and assume it's true. You'll go, oh, that could be true. And that's like a really healthy way to approach information that you get from AI. It's like, oh, might be true. And then this is what my friend Eric was talking about. I have seen AI in the real world on greeting cards at the supermarket. I have seen it on T-shirts. And this is visual AI, so images of AI. And then I saw it on the blanket. And I will talk next about how to sort of look at visual images and get some clues that maybe what you're seeing wasn't generated by an artist, but by AI. Oh, don't do that. So one of the tricky things is that there are clues, but they are becoming more and more subtle. 2 years ago, I felt very confident about always identifying AI in images. I feel less confident now. However, this is not real. So one of the basic things that we can look at that is hard for AI to do in images is hands and anatomy. So you can, if you look really fast, these look gorgeous and perfect. But if you look at them for a little bit longer, I don't know if you can see this, but her arm is growing up from her rear end towards her face. And then she also has a shoulder going down into that same arm. So it's not quite right. And then you can look at this one. Oh, it looks really good. But then when you start to look at the fingers, what is actually going on? It's way less clear. And the necks are often a little bit too long, a little bit too weird. Yes, they love long necks on AI. And it could be a painting by a person, but you're like, a person probably wouldn't do that. I have a friend who is a painter, and I sometimes paint, and I think it's very interesting that, in fact, a lot of the things that AI struggles with are things that real artists do struggle with, like putting two left hands on someone. That's actually something that real people have trouble making mistakes with, because hands are actually really hard. And it turns out, even when the machines learn to do art, it's hard for them too. But it's hard in a way that is actually more hilarious, in my opinion, than when people mix it up. The other thing is to look at a background. And the background, a lot of the times what you'll notice is that it's kind of, you're like, oh, that's really good, this looks like a painting. But then if you focus your eyes on part of it and you can't tell what's going on, you're like, just what's going on right there? Where does she end and the foliage begin? She and the foliage are kind of eating each other. Or you can look down here and you're like, well, she's got kind of a dress, but then what's that? It's kind of fabric, but it's kind of turning into foliage. And then also up here, you're like, I think she's got a hand there, but then where's the rest of her arm? It's kind of missing. And then, oh, oops, she also has an arm down there. So you're like, there's 3 hands. And one of the things that I'm going to say over and over again, and this is hard because nobody wants to do this, is that part of looking at something and thinking about it and is it true or not is just taking time to slow down. And a lot of the way the internet works right now is to make you go as fast as possible and to see as many images as you can as fast as possible, because it's something I'll talk about later called the attention economy. They want to show you something, have it in your face, and have it go away. And that is the opposite of what you want to do if you're asking yourself, is this real? You want to look at the image for a little bit longer and go, what's happening with these guitars over here? Something. It's very subtle. Yeah, you look at that and you look at that, you're like, oh, that's good.
So what I find most interesting about this is it's one elongated area, but there isn't a mirror anywhere else that's distorted, where if it's like a fisheye lens, or you would see it up somewhere else or complementary. And that's...
It's very strange.
I wouldn't have noticed that without the arrow.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So these images are all around us. It's very exciting. Here is, and this is a little bit easier to see. And AI, like many of us in grade school, has a really hard time spelling. So when it's a visual AI, the AI that is learning and creating art, that part of the programming, it's really hard for it to figure out how to generate text correctly. As you can tell, I think we've got a Berto, a Baratio. It's almost fast food. It's Fog Foster. And a lot of times, this one's really obvious because the words are so big. But if you're like, is this created by a person or not? See if you can find some text in the background. Ooh, or maybe a clock with no hands on it. Something that would be a detail that would be hard for this system, which the way that it works is it's just sucked up millions of images and averaging them together. And it's very hard to average accuracy, right? Like you can have, I'm going to do a picture of a building. Buildings have roofs, buildings have walls, buildings have little things like that. Okay, great. But then when you get to the details, you're like, I'm going to average a sign. It's really hard to average a sign. Also, these are a little big. That one's funny to me. So one of the other things that you want to ask yourself is if it's a little bit too good to be true. And like, yeah, it's very, not sure how it's standing up. Yeah. And sometimes, if you're like just using that little bit of suspicion, you can say, is it too good to be true, but also, or too upsetting, or too adorable? Because remember, what everybody wants is your attention, and I'll go into more about why that everybody desperately wants your attention. So they're like, is this going to make somebody look at it? And you're like, it seems suspiciously interesting, right? Like, it's a little too interesting. You can also then look at what's accompanying it. This account, I happen to know, Breathtaking Nature is nothing but AI images. They're a fantastic source if you're like me and you're doing a talk like this. So many things. And they frequently say, it is handmade, made from old driftwood. And so, you know, you might look at that and go, oh, this is super cool. And then if you read this, it's made, does that look like it's made from old driftwood? I mean, maybe, but to me, I'm sort of like, that's, maybe if you told me you sculpted that from clay, I might be, but you're like, I don't know. Be suspicious.
His hair color is natural, but it is unnatural to match your wood sculpture, whatever your hair color. Like,
I always match my wood sculptures. Yeah, but remember that if there's an AI image, there's probably an AI caption, and AI captions are trying to sort of average out what you maybe want to hear or see with a photo like this. So they almost always say the same things like, "Isn't this wonderful? I can't believe it. I made this with my own hands." Those are frequent things that you'll see on Facebook AI images that are making the rounds. Be very suspicious of, I made it with my own hands from tires in Africa or something. So I used to, like I said, feel pretty confident about my ability to distinguish AI from real. And it's good to know how to look at photos and see some obvious problems. But I am not going to lie, this was the point at which I changed my mind about feeling self-confident. There is a quiz that the New York Times put out to decide if some faces are real or not real, and you can play this game with me. How many people think this face is AI? Raise your hand. Okay, so Eric says yes. The rest of you say no. This one is an AI image. And you can look, but like also, I kind of feel like I've seen people with strange foreheads. I don't know.
So I have a friend who's done AI art, and my understanding is AI is, what I want to say is stealing a whole lot of images from everywhere, and then she asks for this color or that kind of design or this or that. So I'm wondering if that's like a real photo that AI played with, that kind of thing.
Okay, so yes and no. AI has millions of photos, and again, it's averaging them. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So this might be one real woman's forehead, another woman's glasses, another woman's mouth, but maybe like just changed a bit. It kind of just shoops it up and then tries to put it together like a puzzle. What's interesting to me is that that's also a lot of times what our brains do. When we draw a picture of a dog, you don't draw a highly original picture of a dog that nobody has ever drawn. You do a little bit, but it's also that dog that you draw is going to be all the images in your mind that you've ever seen of a dog, kind of, and then you put them all together and pick parts of that, and then that's your dog with a little tail or a long tail. It's kind of doing that. But yes, it also, there's a lot of controversy about how the AI, the different types of AI that exist now they did not ask permission to just eat up all the data that they ate up. And there are artists, and it copies their style, and those artists do not like that the AI can copy them. So I'm going to do a couple more faces. Yeah?
Well, my friend has very high ideals, and she has these pictures of beautiful children. And one of my thoughts was, if I'm a parent And then I see this kid, and I'm like, oh my God, that's my kid. So that was something that was sort of disturbing to me.
Yeah, you wouldn't see an exact child that looked like your child, but you might see an AI child with like your child's haircut. So it usually is creating something new-ish. Ish. Yeah.
The grape juice. The Welch's kid, you know, she looked almost too perfect. This was 30 years ago, obviously an actress. And I've seen AI images that make the too perfect.
It looks kind of like the Welch's kid?
Yeah, it looks so perfectly, and you're like, is that human? Is that real? And then you're like, ultimately, it has to be fake from something else. I guess fake is a...
Yeah, so I'm going to make everybody guess about this one. Raise your hand if you think this person is AI. Just guess. Okay, nobody thinks it's AI. Let's go. This is AI. That is an amalgamated person. Maybe, maybe not. But it looks really good to me. As a person, I did not. I got about a little better than 50% on this quiz, which means okay, like I'm a little bit good at noticing, but that's not great odds. I want odds that are like, oh, you absolutely know, and I can't guarantee that I know.
What gives it away there on that?
Nothing. I'm sorry to be disappointing, but nothing gave it away. I can't tell. So that's unfortunately, like, I built up your confidence. I played kind of a trick on you by building up your confidence about how you could tell AI. But sometimes you can't.
So with this, what's the likelihood of I take a picture of my dog and a silly necklace, and it tells me that it's likely AI generated because my dog has a funny snoot?
So this is another tool you can use. And again, it's not a tool that is 100% guaranteed. If you upload an image, it will know that it's AI generated or not. But it's something that we can use. If you're curious or you're concerned, you can use it. It's called Cite Engine. It's on the handout. Is there anybody who needs handouts that didn't get it? I'm going to sort of hand that around and you can pass it back. I am a librarian, so citing my sources is very important to me. Everything I talk about in the talk, at the end there is a citation page so that you can go and look it up for yourself, so that you're not just relying on the fact that I said it to know that it's true. But I do have the URL on the handout so that if you wanted to play with that and upload some images to test whether they're AI or not, you can find out. But it also gives you, like, it tries to guess which thing made it. So this is kind of cool. It's guessing that either the program Stable Diffusion or the program Firefly made it. It's like, that's, the mistakes in here seem kind of like AI from that engine. But it also is telling me, like, we're pretty sure this is an AI. But I have never seen one where it says 100%. And I appreciate that about them. So, and this is, and the people behind this particular site are academics, so I have that bias, so I trust them a little more than a site that is trying to give you information with something to sell you. There are sites that are AI detection sites, and what they want to sell you something. Usually what they want to sell you is teachers and things are very, and people like that are very concerned that they're being scammed, and they want to be like, oh, upload your paper and see if it's real or not. Those are also not completely accurate, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So the real thing I'm going to encourage people to ask is not necessarily, is this fake, but to flip it around and say, is this real? And to kind of assume at this point going forward that the fake content is going to keep growing and the real content is not, and that at some point you're more likely to be looking at something that's not true than something that is sort of real. Don't be totally scared. I know that that sounds kind of scary, but I also want to remind people that in the past, everyone here is old enough that we did go through, I remember when the movie came out, Forrest Gump, and it was the first time that sort of digital effects in movies had been used as extensively. And they were having Forrest Gump like shake hands with dead people. I don't know if you remember that in the film. And it was a big thing because everybody was like, I'm having an existential crisis. If Forrest Gump can shake hands with dead people and I see it on the screen, I'll never be able to see anything ever again and know that it's true. But we did kind of move on from that. And at some level, sort of had to relearn signals for looking at something. And we're like, oh, well, if it's in a movie, we just assume that it's not true. Or even if we do see somebody shaking hands with somebody, there's always a little bit of doubt that something might have been photoshopped. But more recently, we regained a lot of that faith back by going like, oh, but this looks real because it's a short, choppy video, looks like it was filmed on somebody's phone, and we have a lot more confidence and feeling like, oh, we know the difference between expensive Hollywood effects and things that we think we can just tell. I'm not confident. I'm just going to say that. But I also thought a lot about this question, and I thought about what makes me feel better as a librarian. And then I wanted to share a little bit of that with you guys. And I realized that I have been thinking a lot about the question of, is this article a good article for somebody? Is this book a good book for someone? Is this news story, can you tell me more about this news story? So I've been thinking about these things before AI came. And I was getting ahead of myself, so I'm going to backtrack, because I did promise I would talk about the attention economy. So I have a whole different, this is part of a series, I didn't tell you that. And I'm going to be talking every other month about a different topic related to navigating the absolutely wacky digital world that exists on the internet today. And one of the future talks that I'm going to talk about a lot more is, why is the internet being flooded with fake content? Who is doing this? Because I don't know about you, but I don't sit at home thinking, man, you know what would be great? If I made 300 fake articles today and just unleashed them on the public. What if I went on Facebook and made 200 stupid pictures that aren't real and then tried to trick everybody's grandma? So I have gone down a lot of research rabbit holes trying to find out the answer. And there are some complicated answers and some simpler answers. A very big picture answer is that whatever gets attention, that is likes, views, seconds looked at it, advertisers are paying content creators to get eyeballs on their ads, right? And so content creators, the more they can make you look and the longer they can make you look at their picture of Crab Jesus, if there's an ad next to Crab Jesus, you're also looking at the ad. And then they are winning. That's what the advertisers want. And the creators have very quickly realized, I can make more money. The more I make people look at my stuff, the more money I get. And the more you like something, the more the algorithm, which is this thing I'm sure that you know that in the past, old people like me, which I already feel old, when I used to use Facebook, it used to be a time-stamped feed of things that my personal friends were doing in their day. At 3 p.m., Eric posts a picture of his dog. Oh, at 4 p.m., there in the feed, at that exact timestamp, I see my mother, and she's got a really big zucchini. And that used to be my Facebook feed. And I know that probably for you, just like for me, my Facebook feed is just this mishmash of my mother's zucchini, which I love. That's why I originally got on there. I want to see my mom's zucchinis. And then just other random stuff. I'm like, I didn't ask to see this video of this person jumping off a mountain. I don't care about that. I don't want this picture of the strawberry with a face on it. And yet they're on my feed. And the reason is that there's something called an algorithm. And Meta, the company that owns Facebook, and all the other companies think, well, the longer you're on our product, the better it is for us. The more we feel like an important company, and our stock value goes up because you're spending time on our service. And they realize that you don't actually spend that much time on their service when all you get is zucchinis and dogs. So they love it that content creators are putting out things to make you look and look and look at their stuff. And so they just create an algorithm that tries to figure out what you want to see. So the longer you look at something and the more you like it, the more it's going to show you something. So you should be aware that if you hate an image, you should scroll past it really fast so that it doesn't suddenly, your feed doesn't just suddenly turn into nothing but that horrible image, because it's actually just trying to figure out how long what you will look at. What will you look at? And they're like, oh, it's gross? Okay, you want to look at more gross things.
So if you have the visceral reaction and go block that whole account, does it actually tick to their algorithm to show you more like that from other creators? I'll give an example. I don't drink, and a lot of my friends are in recovery, and I block every brand of booze and wine and beer, and it's been hundreds or thousands of brands at this point, and I still get more.
I can't say for sure because I don't work for the algorithm department, but I think my suspicion has been that the answer is yes. That if you spend the time to go block something or write in the comments how much you hate it, it's going to show you more of that thing. Which is chaos. I don't like it. Current reality is very silly. And sometimes this is actually like the people making Crab Jesus. They want you to go to their Facebook page, Love God and God Love You, so that when you're on their Facebook page, you see their profile, which is actually just linking to how that they want to sell you, I don't know, worms for your compost bin. So sometimes they want money from advertisers, and sometimes they're just trying to drive people to their site to buy things. And there's other reasons, but again, you'll have to come back to more talks to hear about the really fascinating and bizarre reasons people want your attention. So again, too good to be true, too upsetting. I personally find this kind of upsetting, too adorable, sad. But there can be things that are too cute in the reality that we live in. Okay, so this is something I alluded to, but at this point, we believe that more of the internet is fake or AI than not. We think it's around 57%. So this was a study that was done with UC Davis, and then Amazon also has people that they pay as researchers, and this is their guesstimate of, in 2024 of June, how much of the internet textually, they weren't even looking at images, they're just like the text on the internet, how much of it is probably AI generated. And they made this guess based on sort of like linguistic tics that AI has, and also on analyzing if a text had been reverse translated. So a lot of online content, they try to hide where it came from by translating it 62 times, putting it out in all the languages, and then like reverse translating and then putting it back up there. So if you read an article and the English seems like a little weird, you're like, it's not quite a sentence. That's not how we would say that. It could be that they're trying to just mask that it's all AI. But this is a very conservative estimate, because this estimate is just looking at things that they could positively say, that's got science. So it's probably higher than that. And again, it's probably going to go higher than that. Yeah.
Maybe we're all thinking this, but it just seems like what you tell us this month, next month, or 6 months from now, it's going to be all the more so, I'm guessing?
Yeah, the expectation is that that's going to become exponential growth in that direction. And then at some point, it'll be like I think it's Greek, the Ouroboros, the snake that eats its own tail. We'll see what happens then. I don't know. I'm fascinated to see what happens. But one of the things in library school that they teach us that I'm really good at is evaluating text. It may be really, really difficult, possibly impossible for me at some point to evaluate images, but I feel a lot more confident about knowing how to evaluate text. And I don't think, even if you read it and it's really good read, the thing about text is I didn't trust information from humans. I've never trusted any information from humans. I always want to know if it's true or not, and I don't believe that just because a human wrote it that it's true. So I would apply the exact same lens to AI that I apply to a human, which is to look for evidence that I can use to verify that it's factually true. So here we have a medical website that is indexed and available in Google. It's called Medical Outline. It has medical and health articles. And so if I were to land on this website, because it had hopefully an answer to a question that I had asked the great Google, I would just do that thing that I talked about where we just slow down for a second and we give it a look. We're just going to look at it. And the way that I learned in library school to look at something and find out if it was a really good source for me, if it was going to answer my question or not, is the CRAAP test, which you can all pronounce in your minds. And that is currency. When was it made? A lot of web articles that are not reputable online leave the date off. There's a reason that there's no date at the top of the article you're reading, and it's that they don't want you to know when it was written because they want you to keep looking at it, because they know that if you know that that article was written 6 years ago, you won't be as interested as if you think it was written very recently, especially with medical information. I don't know about you, I want my medical information to be real current. I might have a different opinion about something. Maybe if I'm looking up an information on dragon lore, I may not need it to be super current. But we want to find out, do we even know when this content was made? That's a good question. The relevance, like this is mostly for researchers. Does this information fit your needs? But you could use that question even if you aren't a researcher, and you could say, did the person making this resource have my question in mind? And if not, what question are they trying to answer? Well, you know, kind of like, why does this exist? Does this exist to answer my question? And then the authority, which is, I feel at this point kind of like old school. So for a long time, we used authority to verify whether something was true. Did this come out of a university? Is this from a major national newspaper? Those were signs that we could use to say, it's probably true. It doesn't mean it's absolutely true, but you're like, it's good chance. These are experts telling me this. It's probably true. And then we had an interesting flip in my life team where everybody's like, wait, so now nobody has to believe anything the experts say because we all can compare notes. And this, in part, was a good thing. And some of it is a good thing. So we have like the Arab Spring. People are like, wait, hey, hundreds of us on the ground are all recording videos. They are all the same, and they all show that everybody is lying to us. So we are being lied to. Let's have a revolution. That's great. They don't have to rely on authority. I think that we are in a period where eventually, if anybody's going to believe anything ever again, we're going to have to step back to a little bit of trusting people with actual credentials, the major newspapers, the big publishers. You know, we're kind of tired of those guys. They're very bossy, and they always sound like they know what they're talking about, even when they're wrong. But yeah, who's telling you this information? Who is the authority of the health info website? I wonder who they are. And then the accuracy, the readability and correctness of the information. And you can find out more about the accuracy of the information. I will show you how to follow links, follow the trail, as we say, to get to more information about whether it's true or not. And then this is super important in our environment right now. What is the purpose of this website? Is this just a website somebody made out of the kindness of their heart because they want to share with me? In the beginning of the web, you know, there were lots of us doing that. There were also people like me who were chaotic young people just sharing whatever my thoughts were about the television shows I liked. But now the purposes are much more complicated.
So when did AI emerge as a more than like 1% or 2% of the internet content? Because then for historical stuff or literature not related to super current events, we can go back to the Wayback Machine, or we can go to archives and find it. But, you know, nothing about the news is related, you know, we can feel is authoritative anymore.
December 2019 is when AI began to be widely available to anybody on the planet who wanted to play with it. So it definitely existed before then in many formats, but the way that it exists now, where anybody at all can use it and create as much chaos as possible, that started small in 2019, and now we're in 2025, we're here.
So back on the CRAAP, so one of my big filters is who's advertising on that page, and so they're paying the bills, so they're slanting. They may be slanting.
Yeah, it's possible that on a page the ads are just auto-generated and they don't know who's advertising on their page, but a lot of times that is going to be something to look for. Yeah, so we'll look at with this specific site. And, you know, I kind of cheated because I have had presentations where I've gone online and tried to do things live, and then it just doesn't do what I wanted to do. So I did screenshot all of this. So here we say, okay, alien hand syndrome article is from June 26, 2021. Like, not super current. Not terrible, not super current. This date at the top, Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. That's when I accessed and made this screenshot. So that date, I think that's just the date of the day. That doesn't help me know when this website was last updated. But there's a lot of 2021 going on. 2021, 2021, 2021. I'm suspicious that this entire site was made in 2021 and that nobody updated it at all after that. And that it was made for a purpose. We're going to try and figure out what on earth is this purpose of this website. So if we're looking at the, is this website for me? If your question, you're like, what? I mean, it says medical and health articles. Are they medical and health articles about all topics? Is this a big aggregator of health topics? It looks like they really care about health, diet, birth control, and parenting, which seem like very specific topics. So you're like, okay, I'm just trying to go through the steps. Maybe maybe they want to do something in here. They're targeting possibly women. I don't know why. Yeah, with the article choices. Pregnancy, birth control. Okay, and then we're going to go to the authority. All right, so when you see an article, usually you'll see who wrote it. If they don't say who wrote it, that's a problem. There are sometimes big websites that are like reputable, like say, oh, you go to the National Geographic's web page and they might not say an article, but you know, because that's National Geographic, that they stand behind it. But I don't know who this website is, so the only information I have about who is telling me information about preterm labor is that Brilla is telling me. So I tried to click on Brilla and I can't. So I don't know. Maybe Brilla knows a lot about preterm pregnancy. Maybe Brilla doesn't. Is Brilla a person? I don't know if Brilla is real. So let's find out about the accuracy. A big thing that I love to tell people to do if you're looking at a website to figure out more about it is that websites should have an about me or about us or an about page. And the about page should give some clues. So in this case, they're a leading provider of timely updates on the latest innovations that take place in the medical field. Sounds good. They have importance in the communities of the world. Wow, that sounds very important. They're not really telling me who they are, though. And I still don't really understand what they do, right? It's a little bit vague. No, they're not part of the American Medical. They do say they always post with authentic links to prevent the readers from being misled. However, these links, here we're getting to this, almost all go to information about this. What is the price of ashwagandha? Should I take ashwagandha for the gym? Can a 14-year-old take ashwagandha? Now, I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't really know what ashwagandha is. I think it's an herb, an herbal medicine. When I clicked on a link in one of their articles, it took me back to their own site to an article about ashwagandha. So this is so much work, you guys. I'm sorry that it's so much work to figure out what people are doing on the internet. But if you want to know if something's real, sometimes you have to stop and dig in. I think this is the purpose of the website.
So they use the word commoners?
Probably.
They did in the second line. And I'd either be very insulted or I'd be like, well, this is AI because they don't know what vocabulary to use.
Yeah, they're missing a little context that a human would be like, that's kind of insulting. Yeah, a human would not hopefully use the word commoners. It could be translated. It could be from, but then I would want to see something like, oh, this is the Times of India. If the Times of India, had like the word commoners, I'd be like, all right, you guys, it's not your first language. You're trying. But nothing on this is saying, also, we don't know who they are. They don't say where they are. They don't say where they come from, but they guarantee they're very authentic, very factual. They've told you they are. They link to articles that they wrote themselves about how they are, so they are, right? And then, as I pointed out, I think this is the purpose of the website. Yeah, this is their FAQ page. Nothing but articles about ashwagandha. Frequently asked questions. I guess a lot of people in preterm labor, or who are interested in health and diet, or who are parents, or they think may want to know about ashwagandha. Yeah. Yeah, on these first two, Ashul. Yeah. That person who we can't find out anything about them, but they wrote some articles on this website. Maybe. There is another, if you don't like the first acronym, here's another acronym. that I also learned in library school, and this is from the University of Chicago. It's called SIFT, and I have been walking through doing this with you, even though you haven't been totally aware, and we'll do it with one more site. Stop, just slow down, investigate the source, find better coverage. A lot of times I do try to find better coverage and I can't, and sadly sometimes you're just gonna have to say, well, with the existing knowledge of the entire world at my fingertips, this is the best answer that we've got. But if you can find better coverage, why not? And then always try to trace claims, quotes, and media back to wherever it came from. And so for that last site, it's a loop. You cannot trace that information. So my daughter asked me a question, and I decided to use it to talk about Google AI searches and also to talk about finding information. So she wanted to know, what is the exact, how many animals don't have teeth? What's the number? She's 12. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, oh, there's frogs don't have teeth. Frogs have teeth? I don't even know about frogs. I am not a biologist. I do not know the answer to this question. So this is an example of, and somebody mentioned it, they see it in their search results. Search Labs AI overview. When I typed it into Google, Google gave me this. And it gives you this very confident summary. Several animals lack teeth, including these mammals, anteaters, armadillos, sloths, pangolins, all birds, turtles, tortoises, sharks, rays, catfish, spiders. No, are you up? Yeah.
Bony fish do have teeth, oftentimes.
Okay. Some fish, some bony fish have teeth. But you know, I'm not a biologist, so I wouldn't just like know that. So I'm just like, maybe.
Sharks have teeth.
Sharks have teeth? Yes. Yeah, that's a great call. Yeah. Sharks do. So what, I'm going to tell you what this is doing, because you're probably curious, and I got curious, so I went and figured out, where does this answer that AI comes up with, why is it writing that? So what it's doing is it's figuring out, it's looking at all the websites it can figure out, and then it sees the websites that were clicked on the most times, that have key phrases that seem like they're going to answer your question. It scoops that together and kind of combines it and goes, okay, we think based on all this information, it's pretty popular answers. These sites say that. But there is not currently a great way for AI to distinguish between what's popular, being clicked on a lot, and what is accurate. So this is giving you, this is a lot like, you know that show where they're trying to answer the question for money, and they're like, do you want to poll the audience or phone a friend? This is like polling the audience. This is like if you had a whole bunch of people at a party and you were like, what animals don't have teeth? Let's ask. So that's what this answer is. Now, there is something that I like. There's these tiny symbols. And that means that you can actually click on the link to see what site it thinks that information is coming from. So this, it's not completely making it up. It got it from somewhere. And then I'm also curious, this is the site that came up here that had information about teeth, okay? This is teeth trivia from Mark George, DDS, dentist. So I was like, that's interesting. I guess now Mark George is the expert on animal teeth, because Mark George has this website. And, you know, I actually think, just wild guess, I think Mark George is a real person. I don't think this is AI generated. This is the kind of website I made when I was young. I love these kind of websites. Like, yes, let's just put some animal facts online. We can see that he's got a homepage. about our team, about our office, dental services, patient info, smile gallery, contact us, and teeth trivia. So AI on Google, when I asked it about teeth in animals, went, let's find out what Mark George thinks. That's great. Mark George is probably a great dentist. Many of these facts could be true. But he was just putting them for kids, so he didn't even bother to say where he found these fun facts. Maybe he was just browsing Wikipedia. I don't know. Maybe he had an animal dictionary. Maybe he just heard it somewhere. We don't know anything about Mark George's qualifications for animal teeth. So I did that next part of the sift where I was like, well, can I find a better website? Let's see if I can find something better. And I'm going to tell you, it was so hard. It's so hard to find a question, an actual authoritative website to answer this question. Kids are amazing. They ask such interesting questions. And I was like, this looks better. This is by Dr. Mark Rhodes, who holds an MS in Fisheries and Wildlife, along with a PhD in Wildlife Ecology. And I'm like, I still don't know. I'm always going to encourage skepticism. We still don't know if Dr. Mark Rhodes is real. AI could imagine a Dr. Rhodes. Yeah. Yeah, you're like, what is it? I'm like, but it's promising. This article had a link I was able to click on and find out about Jack Emery, who is studying animal science. There's a picture of him. I was like, this is promising. So there were a lot of sites that were not promising, but I'm showing you one that I found that I was like, this is probably the best I'm going to do. So earlier I said, like, I still don't 1,000% trust this, but yeah, this has actually got a whole thing. You could look up where he got his degree from. I did a separate search on this guy with the name of his degree, and he had a LinkedIn page. I'm like, okay, this is a fishery guy. He is literally making this page because he deeply loves animal teeth. That is, he went to George Fox, he went to Oregon State, he went to University of Missouri. All right, I think his animal facts are probably true. Another site that I went on to try and find out about where I was like, I just know National Geographic. That probably has good animal facts. So let's not ask Google. Let's just go and see if we can find something. So I went on their site and I did a search, and there's a pretty good little article here about sea turtles, which I liked. And then this is an example of, like, you click a link, and on National Geographic, they take you somewhere really cool. They take you to the turtleconservationsociety.org. That makes me feel really good. I feel like this information, even more than the hobby ecologist, this makes me feel great. So this I can tell my daughter is true. The other stuff I'm like, maybe, I don't know. Unless you want to do a deep research project with me, we don't know the answer. But hey, I can tell you some facts about turtles that I feel confident about. And I feel like that's my librarian skills in action, and that anybody can do that. It just takes time, and to some extent, I do want to say, like, I'm not trying to peer pressure you to find out every fact that you read is true. I'm just saying, be curious, and then also it might be important to distinguish, like, when it actually matters enough to look it up and when it doesn't. So I also think that there are days when I do not look up whether Google's answer about mammal teeth is true. I just don't. I'm like, okay, my daughter's name is Alice. Well, the answer is probably this. And I tell her that. But if it were something important to me, if it were about my health, if it were about making a decision about who I'm going to vote for, if it were about making any kind of decision that impacts other people, that's more important than whether or not the turtle teeth have truth in it. So you don't have to spend every second of your life verifying whether something is true. But that was a fun way to think about, how do you follow that trail? How do you sift, slow down, verify?
A good friend of mine, they use Chat GPT to write their work emails throughout their entire industry, because they used to write the forward, no, please do this now, and it was rude and gruff and people didn't like it. And if you take that lens to look at the rather crummy articles we all first wrote in college versus the ones that people are publishing now, how do we analyze, even if it's AI generated versus AI helped them write it from sounding like they're a jerk?
That's great. That's what I'm going to talk about. Because kind of like the photos, trying to determine whether it's AI or not is so difficult that it might not be worth your time. It's much more worth your time to just evaluate whether it's true or not, instead of fixating on who, is this real or not real? Is it true? That's actually a more interesting question. And then also, I want to circle back and say that I use AI. I also write work emails with it sometimes. And it's a tool, and it depends on how you use it. You can use the tool to write a draft. I often use it to just write a first draft. And then I take it and I make it my own. I change it, I move it around, or I put in a sentence that I'm struggling with writing, and I'm like, hey, can you write this sentence 3 different ways? And maybe I'll like one better. In my opinion, that's a good use of that technology. Now, it's still controversial. Does it use too much energy? Does it use too much water? I'm not qualified to answer that today. But that's not a harmful or misleading thing to do with it. And a lot of the AI content is not necessarily harmful or misleading it. There are lots of people using it for their jobs. And it's going to become so common, like you said, that again, sitting there and trying to dice the sentence apart to say, is this, did somebody use AI to enhance the sentence or not? That is not a good use of your time.
And I understand what you're saying there completely. I know I wouldn't waste my time, but it does concern me when medical determinations are being made and they're using AI in order to determine whether people are eligible for a particular test or whatever. And that is deeply concerning to me. And I mean that they're doing that now. And I say they. It's difficult for me to say precisely who, because I didn't even really know that they were doing it until very recently, or that it was being done, I guess I'll say. So that is very concerning to me, and it's difficult to know how to approach that.
I think that's a reasonable concern, and it's something that I think we should be having discussions with our doctors and with everybody. I do want to point out that there are different AIs. And that it is tempting to think of all AI as one big monolithic thing, but there are different AIs that are created for different purposes. So some AIs are created to make images. Some AIs are created to have a conversation with me via GPT and help me write letters. And some are for the medical industry. I don't have facts about how those work. I, like you, am suspicious, and I would, if I were interested in that question, seek out more information, absolutely, from valid sources.
Thank you. I guess the question is really the AI model, the big language model is just generic things, and the data set is far more important. In other words, when you use it for certain specific applications, you must have some data set to validate the approach. So it's not really a generic question to me, and depends on really what kind of data set and also the validation process. And then back to your question, how do we know? I mean, I understand that to figure out whether it's AI generated content or not is a waste of time. But however, how do we know the content is reliable or unreliable? Especially there's so many new, opinions, right? And I think in this country now, everything has two different, right? Kind of positions. So certain things you can say one way or the other. I guess reliability is far more important, as you pointed out.
I agree. And as a librarian, a lot of times, my job is not to take a political side. It's to find out whether that type of turtle has teeth or not. Like, and I don't care what somebody's. I want it to be that way. It is. It's not. I agree, and I agree that the data sets are super important that each model is trained on, but we can't see them. And I think it's healthy to ask questions of the people that maybe like they're making decisions about whether to approve or deny her claim. It's okay to ask your insurance company, what data set are you using to do that? How did you create this? I think that's good practice to ask questions of it, to find out. It's really being obscured right now.
Well, that's it. Most of the people whose data was being fed into these, algorithms, I guess, were not aware that this process was taking place. They thought actual human beings. Where I've heard of this, on the news, and I can understand how it's an economical way to approach a particular task, but it's highly unethical, actually, at this point, too. Not to know that that's how the system is functioning. But I find out through a good journalist.
Yes, I agree. I encourage everyone to ask. Be curious, be skeptical, ask questions, find out where things are coming from. And then just determine when it's important. So for instance, the turtle teeth might not be important, but that is very important. That is a case where you really want to ask questions about how the AI is being used. Yeah. No, earlier I was talking about that. That's okay. So for most purposes that aren't extremely specific like that, and in that case too, like one approach I was saying is more like thinking if you're at a barbecue with your neighbor and your neighbor tells you a fact that you don't just assume, oh, that's true. Bob said it, it's true. You go, oh, maybe. You take that fact and then you go research it. You look it up. Oh, I want to know if that's true. And that the Google AI, lots of AI, it's the same thing. You just go, oh, that's kind of interesting. Let's find out if it's true. In the case where it's making decisions, that's beyond my pay grade. I don't know how to solve that problem. But it's an interesting topic, and it's one that I read about. Let's see. But actually, here we are again. So it's important to distinguish between things that are just complete wholesale AI, just shot out of the cannon, put online, versus things that are modified with AI, your friend's emails. He wants to sound nicer, so he writes what he's going to say and then asks for help. And then just double checking when it matters. And then also maybe causing trouble if you want to cause trouble at your doctor's office. Don't tell them I sent you, but. And I showed you some AI checkers. I think they're good. They're positive. Don't rely on them. Content labeling. A lot of these platforms said that they would start labeling their own content, like Facebook, that they would start labeling it so that you would know whether it was AI or not. And then everybody kind of relaxed and they're like, that's great. Now I don't have to worry about it. Now I can just see whether it has a label on it or not. They then changed their mind and they stopped. They told everybody they're going to do it and then they didn't do it. The people who are giving you the information, maybe it's a nice thought that they would try to label everything as AI or not, but that's not something we can rely on. It's definitely a clue if you do see something that says AI generated. I would believe that. But if you don't see it,
So do you know if, like, the New York Times, for instance, do they say that they're using AI, or do they check their information from their reporters and so on who may be using it? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know the answer to that question, and now I'm very curious. And I'm going to go find out. I would hope that they have an internal policy about it. Most places at this point should have a policy. The city of Lake Oswego, I was on a team. We have a policy in the city about AI. There are ways that companies determine that it's okay for people to use it, and ways that they say that's unethical. We don't want you doing this, especially not representing us and doing that. And then there are ways that it is. Okay.
Would you mind elaborating what the city?
No, I don't want to get the city in trouble. I'll do very broad strokes. It is not okay for us to generate an entire email with, I will say something that is absolutely not correct, with private information about a citizen in a something like ChatGPT with identifiable details about them, giving them that data. That's not okay. It's also not okay to generate an entire piece of work and then submit it to someone representing that we did all of that ourselves. We have to denote that. However, I will say that, for instance, Parks and Recs, they use some little AI tools to clean up some of their images. They don't have to acknowledge that. Because at this point, the AI tools are built into absolutely everything. It's more of an issue of misrepresenting something in a dramatic, incorrect way. And you know, this is a policy decision, so take it up with the city councilors.
So that's actually exactly what I was going to say. I'm a jeweler, and not too long ago, I saw a very famous actress used as the spokesperson for a very famous jewelry brand we would all know. And this actress was obviously, her images were photoshopped. And she has a unique look anyway, so people were telling me, oh, she just looks like that. I'm like, and they were defending the diamond company that already charges way too much. And I'm like, why would you buy a diamond online from someone you already know is doctoring images? That's where it gets to a point of, how do I, as a consumer, if I can't recognize, and it does literally financially matter, because if I buy a diamond and it's a grade D, 1 carat, and perfect clarity, and it shows up and it's E and it's VS2, I will have lost $7,000.
Yeah, but yes, thank you for the example. I am just going to go back to the basic thing, which is that companies should have an AI policy. Your doctors, they should all have a policy. They should be able to explain their decisions at this point. And it's worth asking. I definitely think that's worth asking. Now I want to know the New York Times policy. I'm going to go find out that later, because I'm very curious. We also had opportunities with legislation to do something about all of this, and those whizzed by. I was writing to a lot of people and following that, and we just decided we didn't want to as a global society. So sorry, we had an opportunity, but everybody decided not to do anything. There are some laws about AI. They are being worked out in the court system, though, rather than through like a Congress, Senate passing bills way. So there are, just like fun fact, you can't copyright an AI generated image. So if you want to create a business and you use AI to make your logo, you cannot copyright that logo. That's fun fact. So we are working these things out in the lower courts slowly, very slowly, as we make mistakes and bring them to the courts and then resolve them. So that's how we've decided we're going to deal with it as a society. Yeah, companies, I don't trust them to police their own stuff. And then, as we talked about earlier, I used to rely fairly confidently on my ability to just tell if it was real or not. I don't. Yeah.
How about intuition?
You can use your intuition, and I can't vouch for it. My intuition used to be a lot better. I'm going to just check the time. Okay. Time is flying by. I'm actually going a little slower than I planned to, but so I'll try to speed up through this last part. This is an interesting application of AI that the libraries are all dealing with right now, which is AI books. So also I wanted you, as people who love books, you're probably here because you're interested in books, to know that this is a problem. I'm just going to tell you straight up, this book is not written by a real person. That's a fake person. This is a fake book. It is a real book. It will show up in your mailbox. It will be printed. It was not edited, written, or gone over by a person. Here's a fun thing on the Amazon page for this book about foraging. Connect with nature, eat some Jimson weed. I'm not a biologist, but I love gardening. You should not eat this plant. Just don't. Okay, so Wikipedia, not perfect, but when you see something and you're like, I don't know, again, research your brain. Think like a librarian. It's okay to go to Wikipedia to just do a quick check. I was like, am I right? Am I wrong? Is Jimson wheat? No. It's a poisonous flowering plant. I highlighted this. It's fatal, severely toxic, delirium, a hallucinogen. Okay, so I'm right about that. Thank you, Wikipedia. Let's look at the author. Again, looks like one of those New York Times photos. He looks like a real guy. He's not. I cut and pasted his bio into here. This says, according to this, GPT0.me, which is something teachers use, it says it thinks it's 100% probability that that was AI-generated text. It's AI-generated. This is not a person. And he does not know about Jimson weed. You should not buy his book. Crazy. You might look at the reviews to be like, oh, the reviews will tell me whether this is a real book. It will not, because some of the reviews are by AI-generated accounts.
Go back to earlier. What's the ashwagandha for this book? What are they? Who's trying to make the money?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer, totally bizarre. So there are these, I can't remember their names. There's an article that is linked to if you want to read all about this. There are some entrepreneurial twins, and they have a YouTube channel, and they are selling get-rich-quick schemes. And the get-rich-quick scheme that they are selling is to buy their data sets of unanswered questions. That means somebody types into the search bar looking for a book with that title. They capture that title returned no search results. And then they will sell you that data set so that you can write those books and get all that money from those people who are looking for those books. And then what they tell you to do is to use a site called Mechanical Turk to hire people in other countries for pennies on the dollar to create AI-generated text and images for your book. And then they tell you how to get it published on Amazon. The really amusing part about this is I will tell you who's making money. These twins. It's not the poor people who are suckered into hiring people in other countries to write AI books. And it's definitely not the poor people in other countries trying to generate AI. There's a word for it. We call it slime. So yeah, it's a bizarre system. That's why AI books exist. It is definitely the Wild West right now.
I don't think it's funny at all.
It's not, and it is. That's fair. It's absolutely unethical. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I will tell them you said that. I'm laughing because sometimes that's all I can do about reality. Because sometimes it's ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing my best here to tell people what's going on. Okay. I will try to be more serious. I will try. I'm sadly not I have trouble being a serious person in life. I apologize.
To me, AI generated or not is not the real issue, because you can rely on AI to generate. Supposedly, AI should have all the data, right? So somebody to edit, and afterwards, I mean, to me, it's far more important. So I get your point that you just cannot use AI to generate the book. However, I would argue that if somebody knows how it works, and then a better way to do that is to generate books using AI, and afterwards and hire experts and to review and then add more content.
No, I agree. And that's where you're talking about ethics. So the unethical part is that there was no editing and there was no oversight and no thought about what could result from publishing something without editing it in any way. That's correct. I agree with you, and you're correct. It's a big problem. These should not exist. And people have written bad books for as long as we've been able to write. The main difference right now is the speed at which they can be put out. And it used to be you could only write so many bad books per year. And now the number of bad books being written is just, it's like a flood. Yeah. Yeah.
We're also in the print-on-demand era where to publish a book that was a field guide, it had to be from a publishing house that you had an assumption of authority, whether it be National Geographic or Smithsonian or something like that, or somebody who loved birds.
Yeah, and that goes back to maybe I'm hopeful that we will move back in a direction of authority once people start realizing how bad this problem is, and that we essentially, unfortunately, there are good books that are self-published, but there's so many that are not that we can't. I, as a librarian, at this point, don't give the time of day to a self-published book. It's not even worth my time. Whereas I used to, 10 years ago, read about it. It might be an interesting book. I now really want reviews from large publishing houses, magazines that I trust. I don't want reviews on Amazon that are just not even, they're just paid for. So let's see how I'm doing on time. Got about 8 minutes left. If you want to read more about what I said, these are on the handout. This is if you want to read about the foraging grift, AI ebook weirdness that is happening. That is a very long form, fascinating article that links to other articles. Yeah, there's some statistics, some things to go home and read if you're interested in more about this topic. Everybody did such a great job of asking questions during the presentation. Are there any additional questions that people have in the last few minutes that we have?
Well, it's more of an observation. I don't use Google because their parent company is involved in pharmaceuticals, and I need natural health things, and they're like trying to exclude as much of the competition. So there's also examining the browsers, and yeah.
Yeah, that's very tricky. They're pretty embedded into our lives, so be curious, ask questions. I think that's always a good approach. My slant is that I'm always just looking for information. I'm a librarian. I want that information. I sometimes do just use 2 or 3 different browsers to see what the results are and how they're different, and that will help me sometimes decide what informational path to follow. So yeah, it's always good to get more options. Anything else? I have listed on the form too the other classes that I'm going to be talking about. So those are going to be at the ACC and not here, though, just so you know. Oh, that's what I was going to ask. Okay, yeah. So the rest of this series will be at the ACC. I am not, this one is recorded right now today, so you can go home and watch it if you found it so interesting you need to watch it again. Or you can tell a friend about it. The ones at the ACC will not be recorded, but I will be working on making videos for our YouTube page that hopefully will be available to share with other people if you're interested in sharing the information. All right. Thank you for coming. Get a cookie, fill out a survey, tell your thoughts about the program. That really helps us know what to do in the future. And thank you for coming.